Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our monthly webinar with the Colorado Division of Housing. I do believe that last month our webinar was a presentation by the Community Access Team, or as we lovingly refer to them, the CAT team. And that got us thinking that it might be a good opportunity to bring all of the rental assistance teams together and to just do another overview. We like to do this once in a calendar year, the different voucher and rental assistance programs that the Division of Housing administers and how they are the same and how they differ. And then just kind of reintroduce you to some of our team and give you all an opportunity to ask questions you might have about our different programs, how they differ, how we access them, where do our referrals come from, those kinds of things. So we wanted to dust off this presentation. We've updated a couple documents that will go along with it. And then we will, like I said, have a time to take your questions. So we're going to get started. Our agenda for today's webinar is, of course, the main course, which is the staff and program introductions, and we'll get to that shortly. We've also got our comparison chart resource that we have provided in the past. We've provided it in many formats, in an Excel format, in a PDF format. Those seem to be, well, especially the PDF format, difficult for people to read. So we provided it in an Excel format. I emailed that out this morning. We're also providing it in a live Google Doc where everyone who was provided that link in today's email will have access to view it. And then we can keep that updated sort of on our end. And you'll always have access to the most updated version. I'm also working with our web liaison, our website liaison, Skylar, to get that document live on our website, so you can access it there as well. Speaking of websites, we'll talk a little bit about some updates we've made to our websites, and then we'll finish it off with an update about the baselines that you all have in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. You'll see this reminder on a couple slides, and that is, although you will be meeting a lot of our other program staff today, the different managers of the different rental assistance programs, we do want to remind you that any specific questions you have about the different rental assistance programs, please continue to direct those to your single point of contact or your SPOC, because our goal is that you will only have that one person. You won't have to try and remember who does the state housing voucher program, who works in the CAT team again. You will just need to reach out to your SPOC, and your SPOC can get you the information that you need. If they don't have it handy, they can go to any one of our colleagues who manage the other programs to get your answer. So this is my first reminder about reaching out to your SPOC. I wanted to provide an updated org chart. So it might be interesting for some of you to sort of follow along. These are the people that are on the various rental assistance programs. Some people might be missing. I tried to include the people that really do the direct rental assistance work, and I apologize if I've missed somebody or a vacant position is no longer vacant. I was trying to update something that we tend to have to update quite a bit. So apologies if I miss anything, but just wanted to give you a snapshot of kind of how many people work behind the scenes to do these rental assistance programs. This is, again, now you know who does what, but we really do encourage you to reach out to your SPOC if you have specific questions. So these are the different rental assistance programs we're going to go over today. Each program has some slides that they will present to you about their specific program. And again, we'll take questions as they come up. Oh, and then please do use the Q&A function, because we have turned off the chat function for attendees. You can use the Q&A section if you have questions. And then I have Lynn and Kimberly who are monitoring those. So they will not go unanswered. So the different programs we have, the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and I will present on that. We also have an emergency housing voucher program that I will present on. Following that, we will talk about the project-based voucher programs that we have, and Zach Schaffner will be presenting on those. Our family unification, or our FUP program, we have Brittany Wade to present on that. Our state housing voucher, or SHV programs, we have Carla Colon Nieves, if I said that right, Carla, presenting on that, followed by our Continuum of Care Permanent Supportive Housing Program, or COC PSH. That will be Julia Daly presenting. And then rounding it off is someone you heard from last month, Courtney Thomason, who will be presenting on the Community Access Team, or the CAT voucher program. But again, you have all their names. We do encourage you to reach out to your SPOC if you have any questions about these specific programs. Okay, well, let's start with the one that everyone is generally most familiar with, and that's our Housing Choice Voucher Program. This is the largest federal rental assistance program in the nation that provides direct assistance to families and individuals in terms of rental assistance. It is kind of I don't want to say like the main program, but we base a lot of our rules, regulations, forms, processes, policy, and so on for our other housing programs on the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And that's because HUD has established this program several decades now and has a lot of really good and clear regulations that sort of help us guide our other programs. Of course, there are places where the other programs are going to differ from the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and that's kind of the point of why we wanted to present today. We have this really great, established program with rules that we can cite, different best practices, admin plans for days, but they don't always meet the needs of everybody who has a housing need in our population, which is why it's important we have our other rental assistance programs available as well to sort of fill in the gaps and to provide housing assistance to people who might be left behind by the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And let's be honest, there isn't enough resources already that any additional housing programs we can provide is wonderful. We just want to make sure we are able to serve as many people, regardless of different challenges or different vulnerabilities or different things that might keep them from the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So just in a nutshell, again, it is the federal government's major program for assisting very low income families. That includes the elderly and people with somebody in the household who has a disability, and it allows them to afford decent, safe, and sanitary housing in the private market. And that's key. That's using the voucher to sort of get folks not into a public housing unit or a unit that's set aside just for people who are low income, but it's to sort of mix everyone into the larger community and to rent in the private market. We provide housing assistance on behalf of the family or the individual, and then allow those families to go find their own unit. Of course, most of our participants, 75% at least, we're required to serve people who are at 30% AMI. So that's our very or extremely low income population. But we do have some flexibility to serve those in the very low income, which is 50% AMI. So those of you who manage or who administer our HCV program know if you've got somebody whose income is above that extremely low, you have to contact us so we can take a look at all the income of the households we serve to make sure we're still meeting that requirement that at least 75% of our households are at 30% AMI. I think a lot more than 75% of our households are at that limit. But again, we do need to check. So please continue to reach out to your SPOC if you find one of your applicants has a little bit higher income during the eligibility stage. In the Housing Choice Voucher Program, our referrals come exclusively from the waiting lists at your agencies that you all manage. And then we take those individual agency waiting lists and we combine them into our statewide waiting list. And then we can choose applicants from either list. So if your agency has turnover, you need to pull someone else from the waiting list. You can pull from your waiting list. If you have a voucher that turns over, but you don't have a current active waiting list, then we can pull from our statewide list. And then more recently, if we find ourselves with a budget surplus and we need to put several vouchers on the street immediately, that's when we pull from that statewide waiting list. We have enough funding for 50 new vouchers. We're going to pull from that statewide waiting list because that's going to rank everybody from all the waiting lists across the state. It's going to rank them by preference, by date and time, and so on. So that's the most equitable way for us to get that budget surplus out on vouchers onto the street. So the Colorado Division of Housing's Housing Choice Voucher Program will target our assistance to specific populations or what we call our local preferences. Now, any housing authority that administers a housing choice voucher program can set their own local preferences on who they want their vouchers to serve. In some communities, there could be a population of unhoused or people experiencing homelessness, and that's the greatest critical need. So they may want to target their vouchers to that population. There are other communities that don't necessarily see that as their main population, but maybe there's a, people with disabilities in the community really have that need for housing. Of course, there's overlap between the different populations, but I think it's important to know that each housing authority sets their own priorities, and these are the Division of Housing's priorities. So again, we target our housing choice voucher assistance to households that include someone experiencing homelessness, households that include someone with a disability, households that include someone experiencing domestic violence, non-elderly disabled households, that's anybody who has a member in the household who is a person with a disability and they are not yet reached their 62nd birthday, who are transitioning from an institution such as a nursing home, a group home, or some sort of other institutional living situation that is not criminal justice or corrective, a correctional facility. And then we do give points to applicants who are current participants in another DOH rental assistance program. And the reason we do that is because, as you'll learn, our other rental assistance programs generally offer rental assistance to people who are experiencing critical need now and who also need some other services sort of wrapped around them. As those individuals kind of stabilize and don't need that higher level of services, we want to move them into a more permanent housing program where there might not be as many services, so we can keep those programs open for those that need them. So that's why we give that additional points. I wanted to provide a couple of resources, specifically our Code of Federal Regulations that rule our program, our Housing Choice Voucher Program. Those are found at 24 CFR Code of Federal Regulations 982. Now it's very extensive. I provided what I find to be the most reliable digital resource for those regulations. But if you look at our admin plan, which is the second link, you'll see that we are obviously citing those federal regulations. In every policy and procedure that we come up with, we're citing those regulations. So those are two very important resources that we use in our program. I also wanted to provide a link to our website that has all of the forms for all of the different programs. I think that's an important resource for people to have access to. And of course, as we update forms, you're going to find the most current and most updated form on our website. I'm going to roll into the Emergency Housing Voucher Program. Just have a couple slides on that. This isn't necessarily impacting the majority of our voucher administrators across the state. but it is impacting some of you. There are some of you who are currently administering this program, but the majority of these vouchers are being administered out of our office right now. I would like to point out that we do have a position that posted that closes on Monday, the 29th, for an emergency housing voucher residential coordinator for the Division of Housing, because this program is continuing to grow, and we would love to have someone join our team to assist. So the Emergency Housing Voucher Program is a time-limited, tenant-based voucher program introduced by HUD in 2021. It was funded by the American Rescue Plan, and the purpose is to prevent, prepare, and respond to coronavirus to facilitate the leasing of emergency vouchers. So a lot of people who are at higher risk, and of course, you know, coronavirus and COVID still very relevant, but when this program was proposed, it was during the higher rates of concern of getting people kind of out of risky environments where they were more at risk for being exposed into housing. It is now sort of morphed into, well, let's get people who are at risk in other risky situations, not necessarily related to COVID or the coronavirus, but just kind of getting those people that we really need to take care of in a safer housing situation. When I say it's time limited, I mean that the voucher program, the emergency housing voucher program, sunsets in the year 2030. So that means anyone who remains on the program beyond September 30th of 2030, technically the program is time limited and will end, but there will always be an option for that person to stay in some sort of rental assistance program. So we don't want to worry people with that time limited language. This program is managed almost identically to the Housing Choice Voucher Program with some differences. And one of those is the way we receive referrals. We are required to receive our referrals through the local coordinated entry system, of which Colorado has 4 different continuum of care agencies that each have a coordinated entry system, or who have several regions that have coordinated entry systems. We've entered into an MOU with all 4 of our Colorado continuum of care agencies. And then we've also entered into an MOU with 3 victim service provider agencies, specifically in the Denver metro area, because we learned that our coordinated entry system in the metro Denver area doesn't necessarily test or score people who might meet one of the preferences of domestic violence. So we wanted to make sure we were covering all intended populations with our emergency housing voucher program. So we are also receiving referrals from some victim service providers. So the populations that the emergency housing voucher program is targeted to, HUD is very clear on who we have to serve with this. And that's families or individuals who are currently experiencing homelessness or who have recently experienced homelessness, but they're currently in a program such as rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, or people who are at risk of experiencing homelessness. And then finally, people who are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and/or trafficking. So when I talk about those victim service provider agencies that we've partnered with, it's 3 agencies that each of them specifically serve one of those 3 populations. So we make sure we're not missing anybody that HUD intends for us to serve with these vouchers. And similar to the Housing Choice Voucher Program, I just wanted to provide anyone who's interested with some important resources that talk about this emergency housing voucher program. The first one is the temporary policy supplement that we adopted within our admin plan that talks about the basics of the program and then specifically how the Division of Housing intends on administering the program and how we use the different funding sources that we've received, where we get our referrals and so on. There is a very informative PIH notice 2021-15 that talks about the operating requirements for the emergency housing voucher program. More information than probably anyone needs, but Everything's laid out there, again, if you're interested. But then just a reminder, for the most part, the regulations that govern the administration of our housing choice voucher program generally apply to the emergency housing voucher program. So I again provided that digital resource for those federal regulations. Okay, I'm going to pass the mic over to Zach Schaffner to take over for project-based vouchers.
Terrific. Thanks, Catherine. Can folks hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. So project-based vouchers are, there are different types of project-based vouchers, but I'm specifically going to talk about project-based housing choice vouchers. And so one thing that's really critical, and for folks who haven't worked with project-based vouchers in the past, is that they are tied to a specific unit. So we enter into a housing assistance payment contract with the owner of the unit. And then in that contract, we list in Exhibit A the specific units that are supported with that project-based voucher from Division of Housing. We exclusively allocate our project-based vouchers to supportive housing. And so they are allocated through our annual request for applications for supportive housing. So that's the only mechanism right now for the allocation of those project-based housing choice vouchers from Division of Housing. That RFA is also used for the allocation of project-based HUD-VASH, project-based Homeless Solutions Program state housing vouchers, and 811 resources that some of my colleagues will talk about in just a few minutes. Those housing choice vouchers are allocated on a 20-year basis through that HAP contract. In addition to the Exhibit A, which includes the specific units included, that HAP contract includes a tenant selection plan. And so that tenant selection plan governs how individuals are selected for that housing opportunity. So oftentimes we're asking for referrals through the coordinated entry system or other DOH approved referral processes for those project-based vouchers. And you can jump to the next slide, Catherine. So really the policies are specific to the individual program, knowing that we have several different varieties of project-based vouchers. But the big distinctions are around family size consideration. So unlike a tenant-based voucher where a family goes through the waiting list process and is selected for a voucher, because we're talking about specific units, the family size is a consideration. And so you need to qualify for a specific unit that is available. It's a different type of it's really a vacancy-based turnover process that, okay, we've got a 2-bedroom available, you're eligible, we're going to move forward with the tenancy and working with property management oftentimes to facilitate that lease up. So the families need to meet those occupancy standards at lease up. Again, really that tenant selection plan drives the referral process. That tenant selection plan, we've really worked in recent years to refine our tenant selection process, but it's always improving. So generally we look at program eligibility, referral sources, criminal screening criteria, as well as the referral sources, criminal screening criteria, eligibility, and preferences. So those are the different aspects that are included in the tenant selection plan. If folks have ideas about improvements to the tenant selection plan template, we're eager to hear them. Again, it's always a changing process. We've really made some exciting adjustments to that template as we get more some really innovative supportive housing interventions like the ones at Valor on the Vax that'll be opening up in just a few months here. So really excited to continue to build out those tenant selection plans if folks have got ideas. The way that, and this often is a concern in supportive housing, is that individuals who are using a project-based housing choice voucher have the ability to request a tenant-based voucher after a year of tenancy. And the way that works is they are able to be added to the waiting list for a tenant-based voucher with that preference that Catherine referenced on current participants of DOH voucher rental assistance programs. And so that they're not guaranteed a voucher, but they are able to make that request. Given that we allocate our project-based vouchers exclusively for supportive housing, a key tenet of supportive housing is that housing first, trauma-informed care, harm reduction, motivational interviewing. And so we never want to see folks pushed out of a supportive housing opportunity before they're ready to do so. And it's really based on client choice. And so, but they do have the ability to make that request. They don't need to be in good standing in order to make that request. And we really see that as a very powerful tool to help open up new supportive housing opportunities, because if someone doesn't need that project-based rental assistance with wraparound supports, they can move into a tenant-based setting in the community and open up that housing opportunity for someone else. You can jump to the next slide, Kathy.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. And I don't see any questions. So we will, I see a question, sorry. It just popped up. So Zach, this question is, if the person makes the request before their lease is up while participating in a PBV, does their name get added to the HCV waitlist immediately following their requests?
So I believe the answer is yes. So they can make that request mid-tenancy. Really what I encourage folks to do is not to sign a mutual rescission of lease until they have found a location to tenant-based, a location to utilize that tenant-based voucher. But they can exit their project-based unit and still retain their position on that tenant-based voucher waiting list. They don't need to be in good standing. We've adjusted some of our policies on that in recent years because we know that it's a very valuable tool, and that folks are gonna, that's really the HUD regulation speaks to that. So I hope that answers your question. PRA, Courtney, can you speak to that?
Well, before Courtney does that, I think Lynn wanted to add something to your answer.
Oh, terrific.
Zach.
Yes, thanks, Catherine. Just to clarify, with the HCV program, if you have a project-based resident that's requesting a tenant-based voucher, you are not going into Elite and adding them to your HCV waiting list. That is not how we do it. With HCV, they get the next available voucher. And so I think current projects that we have, they kind of have their own Google Doc, something that they're tracking those people, but there is nothing in Elite that you're putting someone on the HCV waiting list in Elite for those people who are going from project-based to tenant-based. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Awesome. Sorry about that, Lynn. And I know that process looks a little different for our project-based homeless solutions program state housing vouchers. And so Carla can speak to that, but it is a similar of, there is a more of a waiting list, but Carla can speak to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach and Lynn, for your project-based voucher knowledge. I'm going to jump to Brittany, and then we will answer this question again in chat. Lynn, if you want to answer that in chat, and then we'll jump to Brittany, who will talk about our family unification program, or our FUP program.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So yeah, our family unification or FUP program, there are two sides to it. The first side is a youth focused side, which is 36-month vouchers for young adults between the ages of 18 and 24, not yet 25, who were in a Title IV placement for at least one night on or after their 16th birthday. So because that is like really specific in terms of the funding source of who is paying for that young adult to be in a placement, we do often depend on DHS to let us know whether or not their placement counts or not. And it can have been in another state that they were in foster care or another out-of-home placement kind of similar to that. There are a few DYS placements or Division of Youth Services placements that would also qualify them for FUP. So again, another reason why we really depend on DHS to kind of let us know what the funding stream was for that placement. There is not a literal homelessness requirement for these vouchers, but they just need to be homeless or at risk of homelessness. And then they can get themselves onto the list if they're going to be exiting their placement within 90 days. So referrals for the FUP program, the FUP youth program, come from coordinated entry. There is funding for the FUP youth program to assist with a one-time security deposit. And then it is a requirement of this program that supportive services must be provided to participants for at least 18 months of their time in the program. So those are things kind of like independent living skills, supporting all of the things that we know someone who is 18 probably needs support with, or that all of us when we were 18 needed support with. So providing that. And then much like the HCV vouchers, 30% of their income is paid toward rent and a minimum of $25 per rent or per month, good grief. And then our youth FUP participants have the ability to participate in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which could be an additional 5 years of housing support. That does have a requirement also for case management and supportive services to help that young person get to a place of self-sufficiency, so a place where they can pay their full rent on their own. So that usually entails some kind of work program or an educational program, something that's going to get them to a place where they are making enough income each month that they can pay that rent on their own. There are criminal background checks for all adults in the household, and so follows our HCV requirements for exclusionary offenses for that. And then the other side of the FUP program is a FUP family voucher, which is a non-time limited voucher. And these are direct referrals from child welfare, and they are for families who are at risk of losing custody of their children due to housing, or the only thing keeping them from being able to have their children returned to their custody is housing. And so those don't have a case management requirement, but obviously as much supportive services as we can provide to our families is always really helpful. And so Catherine, happy to have you up to the next slide.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any questions right now about FUP. Thank you so much, Brittany. We may have some though, so I might call you back.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on to our state housing voucher program, which is managed by Carla, and she's got several slides. I know she's very excited to share with us.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. All right. So the State Housing Voucher Program, or SHV program, also provides non-time limited rental assistance and access to supportive services for households where the head of household has a disabling condition, a history of homelessness, and is extremely low income, so at or below 30% AMI. The SHV program has both project-based and tenant-based vouchers, and similar to the other rental assistance programs, it is based on the Housing Choice Voucher, or HCV program, with a few key differences. So the SHV program is funded by the state government, which allows us some flexibility in how the program is run. So for example, a criminal background check is not required for the head of household. So we are able to take people with sex offenses, for example. Another key difference is with the passing of House Bill 21-1054 last year. State housing programs do not require documented lawful presence. And so the SHV program can also take households with mixed documentation status. Another key difference is that we follow similarly to the COC-PSH termination policies, where assistance is only terminated in the most severe cases. And I know Jalea will talk about COC-PSH next. So for SHV program, there is no fixed number of tenant conferences before termination. We're approaching everything on a case-by-case basis. The other key difference is that the SHV program will provide assistance with security deposits and damage payments. So with security deposits, up to 2 times the amount of month's rent can be requested each tenancy. And then we'll also help with payments for tenant caused damages to the unit, and up to one time the amount of 1 month's rent can be requested with each tenancy. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the state housing voucher program is kind of an umbrella term for 3 separate smaller SHV programs. Well, not smaller, but just 3 separate SHV programs. And really, they operate the same way. They're just different funding sources. So we've got the Mental Health State Housing Voucher Program, or MHSHV, the Homeless Solutions Program State Housing Voucher, or HSP-SHV, and the Recovery Oriented Housing Program State Housing Voucher, or ROHP-SHV. So really, they operate the same. They've just got some different funding sources, and with that, some slightly different funding priorities or target populations. So like, for example, the ROHP SHV program that came to us through House Bill 19-1009. Very similar target population for the larger SHV program, but the disabling condition needs to be a behavioral health condition, and they need to be exiting from certain facilities or settings such as county jails, mental health institutes, recovery residences. So I won't walk through this entire table, but just so you know, when we talk about SHV, we might be referring to either one of these different programs. We always see a different acronym before the SHV acronym, but they really do operate pretty much the same. So each, no matter which SHV someone has, the eligibility, the referral sources, the preferences, those will all be articulated in the participant or tenant selection plan for that project with the SHV allocation. Next slide. So the referrals for the SHV program, the way that it works, typically we'll do an RFA, whether it's that annual PSH RFA that Zach referred to, or we'll do a tenant-based supportive housing RFA. And then we will allocate the state housing vouchers to those applicants or those select entities who will have those state housing vouchers. So that entity could be a community mental health center, it could be a reentry provider, a homeless services provider. Either way, they are often the lead service provider and the referral partner. And by referral partner, I mean that they are coordinating the referrals from multiple sources typically. So for example, we might have a community mental health center who has this allocation of state housing vouchers. And their participant selection plan might say something like 50% of referrals need to come through coordinated entry, 50% of referrals can come from that mental health center's programs or their clients. So that entity is the one with the vouchers, and they will coordinate the referrals in their community to identify households for those vouchers and select them. So that's how the referrals work. When they select an individual for the state housing voucher, they will complete the application for the state housing voucher, and they will submit that via a Google form that'll then come to me or whoever's the SHV program manager. Currently, that is me. And so that only works for tenant-based vouchers. For project-based, that they will follow the specific process that is articulated in the tenant selection plan and the HAP contract. For tenant-based vouchers, it'll go through the Google form. If approved, we will issue the voucher and notify the voucher administrator via email. Hey, this household got a voucher. This is their increment and elite. This is the type of voucher they have, and here's their support team. So we'll typically link the voucher administrator to the services staff that the individual is working with. Next slide. All right, so kind of mentioned this at the very beginning, but the eligibility criteria for those with state housing vouchers, they need to be at least 18 years old, extremely low income, have a history of homelessness and a disabling condition. Out of that pool of eligible households, when someone is referred, folks are prioritized based on preferences. So it's not first come, first serve. It's not a random selection. Because these vouchers are so limited, we need to be targeting toward those who have the highest barriers to housing. So preferences could include severity of service need. It could be frequent or high utilization of publicly funded systems. and then any additional preferences that might be articulated in that tenant or participant selection plan. Next slide. Finally, I do want to point out that state housing vouchers are typically allocated as part of a supportive housing project. And with the target population that we are working with, we recognize the need for these vouchers to be paired with those non-time limited wraparound supportive services in that supportive housing model. So we will often award these vouchers to partners who are also receiving DOH tenancy support services or TSS funding. And those services involve dedicated outreach, housing navigation, lease-up assistance, housing stability plans, eviction prevention supports, coordination of access to services, landlord mediation, ongoing tenancy support, all of that. And so these services are really crucial to ensuring that we are using these vouchers in a supportive housing model. So emphasizing those principles of housing first, harm reduction, and trauma-informed care. And so when these are paired together with the vouchers, we are better able to support our program participants, you all, as well as our landlords. So similar to what Catherine did earlier, the further resources on the SHV program can be found in the SHV programs and policies document, as well as the SHV chapter in the admin plan. And I think that's it for SHV.
Thank you, Carla. You did that
Mhm.
fast and efficiently. Looked like there was a question, but it got answered. So I'm going to move on and we will call back to you if we have questions at the end, although I know you may not be here, but let's move on. Jalea, Continuum of Care, Permanent Supportive Housing.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good.
Excuse me. Bear with me. I don't know what's going on, just not a little gunky. So sorry if I'm coughing and clearing my throat a lot. Thank you for bearing with me. So yes, the Continuum of Care Permanent Supportive Housing Program, which has been my baby for the past 3 years since I've been with the state, is a federally funded HUD program. Excuse me. And oftentimes does follow the HCV program implementation with a few nuances that are specific to the COC-PSH program. But to begin, the program does serve individuals and families that have a history of chronic homelessness by the HUD definition. So that, means 12 consecutive months, or for instances in 3 years that total 12 months, income at or below the 30% AMI, and have a disability that can be documented by a licensed professional within the state of Colorado. In terms of this specific grant, it exists in all 4 COCs and has in the past. We are going, so CBIs are not required for the head of household for the program, but it is for all other household members 18 or older. And given that fact, that means that we do not exclude individuals with histories of that are registered sex offenders, nor have we even specifically with anyone with any other criminal history things, because we do not do background checks. And then the other thing is that we do NSPOW or sexual offender registry checks for other household members that are 13 or above. Next slide, please. Excuse me. COC-PSH is a wonderful program that offers security deposits to program participants up to 2 times the monthly rent. Each household is allowed automatically 2 security deposits Any above and beyond the 2 initial security deposits is approved on a case-by-case basis by the program manager or the homeless program specialist. That meant like myself. And that is based on a number of different things, like, are you getting back security deposits? You know, have there been tenant conferences or tenant meetings to discuss like not getting back security deposits and other things like that? Those security deposits cannot exceed 2 times the monthly rent. And I have had folks in the past request if, you know, if the security deposit is more than 2 times the monthly rent, if a third party can pay the difference. And we have allowed that because it's not an original, it's not in addition to, it doesn't affect like the 30% that you pay towards the rent and you can't pay above and beyond that. We do not follow the 40% rule like HCV does and some other programs, but you know, getting some additional assistance on a security deposit is totally fine to help someone access a unit. Deposits should also be returned to DOH at the end of a tenancy for a program participant. And if they're not being returned, the landlord should be completing the security deposit retention form. And this is something that I think that we could do some more follow-ups on, because there's plenty of security deposits that do not get returned to DOH, yet we do not necessarily receive the security deposit retention form. So if you guys could do a plug when you're working with folks as they exit housing or exit a unit, that would be most helpful. Thank you. Next slide, please. Damage deposits are allowable, which is another awesome aspect of the COC PSH program. Unfortunately, only one is allowed for the entire duration of your program existence. However, if you exit the program and re-enter at a different time, those are considered 2 separate enrollments in the program. So you may be eligible for another one at the second enrollment, but if you remain in the program for a period of 20 years, you only are allowed one. If it's 20 years consecutive and there's no breaks in that programming. Rental assistance, just like SHV, is non-time limited. And it must be, the unit must be within the FMR or the payment standard. To go outside either one of those, you need to have an RA. And yeah, that'll be it for this slide. Next slide, please. Like any of the other DOH housing programs, we do require an HQS inspection prior to lease up and at annual. And anytime there's any sort of interim moves also. And for your initial lease up, you may not, the lease up or the portion of the rent may not exceed the 30% of the participant's income, and the unit size should match the voucher size. There have been questions about this recently. I do have it on my to-do list of something to follow up on, but just wanted to sort of just highlight that real quick, because I know that there have been questions about, oh, well, what if this unit is a 2-bedroom, but it's below the payment standard for a 1-bedroom? Can we do that? And so I am looking into it, and I hope to have some updates for you soon. Next slide, please. Thank you. Voucher portability is a little tricky with COC PSH, and we are not as I guess permeable, I would say, as the HCV program. We have access to in-state portability through the other COCs, or to connect to another COC within the state of Colorado. However, out of states have been a bit of a challenge in terms of connecting with COCs outside of Colorado that are willing to accept recipient, a COC PSH recipient in their community. And oftentimes the sort of response we have received is, we have like no available vouchers is usually the top one that we get, or we just sometimes don't even get a response and people don't even respond to us. And so I know that it's a request that some folks do have, and we hope that perhaps we can see some progress and success with out-of-state portability in the future, and we'll continue to try. But that's that for that portability for COC PSH vouchers. Next slide, please. Excuse me. We do end of year reporting for this program in 2 levels. That the first is DOH to HUD, and then the second is DOH PSH subrecipients to DOH, and that's usually within 45 days after the end of the grant term. And then we submit to HUD within 90 days of the end of the grant term. Match is also collected on an annual basis. Excuse me, at the end of the grant term with that end of year reporting, just to verify that what you have committed to the grant for match has been met at the end of the grant term. And I guess that's something that I didn't mention, is that PSH is a little different from some of the other programs too, in that the COC PSH program does have a 25% match commitment that is required to have HUD release grant agreements on an annual basis. And so as we see our grant awards increase over time, we also increase the amount that we request in match from our subrecipients. So thank you for continuing to be our partners as things change and evolve. Excuse me, next slide, please. And that would be the end of the COC PSH. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna hand it over to good old Courtney Thompson.
Thanks, Julia. And it looks like the questions we had for your program have been answered, but we may call out to you. All right.
Thank you. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry.
Well, hopefully we won't have any more for you because you sound like you need to rest your voice. All right, Courtney, let's do maybe a little review of the webinar last month.
Hey everyone, it's Courtney Thomason. As Catherine had mentioned, you had just heard from me, so a lot of this is going to be a review. So we can probably just get through this fairly quickly for you all. The Community Access Team, or the CAT team, as we have come to call it, helps people with disabilities stay in their homes and the community, and also to discharge from nursing facilities and other institutions into affordable, safe living, independent environments. So our partnership is with the Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance, or HCPF, our Colorado Medicaid program provider. And again, it is for those exiting institutions, and they need to be eligible for HCBS waivers, which is home and community-based waivers. New for the people, it's also trying to avoid emergency placement on the development disability HCBS waiver. So that's also a new part, I guess, of the program, a new waiver that we can implement. Medicaid does provide the transition coordination to help people leave the nursing homes and other institutions. So there are our transition coordination agencies, which all of you are familiar with if you do administer CAT. And Medicaid also provides ongoing support services to help people live in the community. So the collaboration with our transition coordination partners, of course, is between Division of Housing and HICPUF, and they are outside contracted agencies. These transition coordinators act as a liaison and their support system for the applicant in order to guide them through the transition process, lease up, inspection, getting documents in, etc. Next slide. As with most of our programs, the CAP program is guided by the Housing Choice Voucher Program and the regulations. There are a few nuances though. It is a state-funded program, so it does not have any of the federal kind of regulations that the Housing Choice Voucher Program does. So we're a little bit more flexible. And many of the policies are similar to the SHV, the Office of Homeless Initiatives that you all just heard from Carla and Jalea. And these are primarily tenant-based. So the CAP program does not have any projects at this point. And I don't really foresee that happening. The eligibility criteria, as with most of our programs as well, the head of household needs to meet the following. They obviously need to be above 18 years old. They need to be at the extremely low income limit, exiting an institution, or at risk of being placed in an institutional setting. So it could be, they are at risk due to their homelessness of being placed in an institutional setting. And they also must have a verified disability. So this is one that we run into sometimes, and it's been getting a lot better. So I feel like we've almost eradicated the issue, but that our applicants do need to have their verification of disability completed by somebody that does have a license number. So that is definitely something that we as the Division of Housing, since we are the ones that are, providing you all with the referrals, we will have already vetted them, gone through everything, run all their checks. And so by the time they get to you all, everything has been checked and they should be good to go as far as starting the housing search. Next slide. Yep. For the referral process, we only accept the voucher applications through HICPUF. So first, the applicant will engage in an assessment for eligibility through options counseling with Dr. Cog. And then the housing application will be completed by the applicant and then submitted to us through the designated CAT box, the CAT inbox. So pending, obviously the correct documentation, the applicant will be approved for the briefing. Once we have approved them for the briefing, we send out the verification and the referral to you all, and we assign that individual to your agency. That will be via email that we notify you all. You all are very familiar with our notification process, I believe. And then you all are responsible for doing those briefings. So for contacting, for keeping in contact with the transition coordinator, the applicant, so that you all can conduct that briefing. Obviously, after the briefing is done, then the applicant can continue to look for housing. At the orientation, we have been hearing back, and I don't know if this is still happening or if it kind of has stopped, that the transition coordinators do always need to be present at the briefing or the orientation. The client cannot attend alone. They have to be able to have somebody there in order to help them, maybe clarify something or understand the paperwork that they're completing, anything like that. It's especially important if they're there, obviously if we're not doing them in person, because then we can't help. And it must be submitted to you all right afterwards. The voucher signed, everything. There's no reason that they need to be dragging it out. They should be able to get it completed as soon as the briefing is conducted and concluded. Again, 120 days. Really quick update before I go over the nuances. There are a few. And I know that most of you again are familiar with this because we just said that last month. We've sent out action alerts, etc. Update for reasonable accommodations on the increased payment standard. So they do not, we can automatically approve a higher payment standard at new admission if the tenant's regular income is enough to support the 40%. So written RA verification isn't required. You can just notify your SPOC for that. Please remember to also continue to do both of the actions at their lease up, so their new admission action, and then also their 90-day out interim with their full income, so that we can kind of help them avoid repayment agreements. Okay, so a couple of the nuances of this program are there's no CBI unless it's a live-in aid or they want to add a person after the briefing or lease up. There's also the 2-month security deposit. We can pay up to 2 months of the contract rent for the security deposit, but the landlord needs to return it within 30 days of the move out to be eligible for another one. There is no damage deposit at this time. It is something we are looking into. We're talking about it, but it's not something that we have implemented. And on this program, there are no ports. There are only in-state transfers because this is a state-funded program. So we can't be transferring people out of state. We don't have the funds to do that. Couple more things before, I think this is the last slide for me before we finish up, is that the transition coordinators, you all need to keep in contact with the transition coordinators to ensure that the applicant's phone number and the email and everything that they had is all set up so that you can contact them after the transition coordinator runs out of units. The transition coordinator, and I know that this may or may not be happening and it's not necessarily your guys' job to enforce this, but just something to keep in mind that the transition coordinator should make sure to let the participants know and assist them with who to contact for housing, food stamp, Medicaid renewals, supportive services, etc. Without that, I know a lot of you are finding that the applicants and the participants are kind of being left to the wind. Right? They risk losing their housing, losing their food stamps, health assistance, things like that. So I know that on this program, we ask you all to do a lot and we very, very, very much appreciate you all. So thank you. But just something to keep in mind that the transition coordinators should be assisting them with this, and that they may have not, or they may have not necessarily gotten as far as they needed to go or could go before they ran out of units. So just keep that in mind when you are reaching out to them. And then last updates and reminders. So birth certificate no longer required for us. Carla had mentioned as part of the House bill that it is no longer, the lawful presence is no longer required for them, but birth certificate is no longer required at all for us. We do go off of supplemental documents or additional documents that we can look at. The landlord and or the transition agency, they might be responsible for payment prior to a revised HAP contract effective date if it's outside that 60-day window. So it's extremely important for people to remain in communication with each other so that we can get those documents processed and the landlords pay, and nobody else has to, pay out of pocket or any additional burden. Please remember that repayment agreements are required now, but were effective on 8/1 of 22. So if you are doing your annuals, running into anything like that where there has been unreported income, no matter the amount, those individuals do need to enter into a repayment agreement. And I think that is it for me. Is there another slide for me? Nope. Not. So that's it for me. Thank you all for all that you do. We appreciate you. And thanks.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay. So you've heard from all of the program managers for the different rental assistance programs. And it's a lot. And of course, how do we keep it all straight? Where the programs differ, what one program requires, another one doesn't. So we, several years ago, created our rental assistance program comparison chart, where we highlighted, I don't know, 20 or so different areas where the programs may have different guidance. And then we indicated for each program what that guidance was. This is ever changing because, as you know, as regulations change, as the legislation changes, such as with our state funded programs no longer requiring having a residency requirement, we wanted to be able to update, you know, in real time when these things change, so that you all who administer more than one of our programs can kind of keep it straight. And also, to be honest, so that we internally can keep it straight, because it's a lot for us too. We know our program, right? The one program that's assigned to us very well, but our SPOCs and our rental assistance team, we have to know everything for all the programs. Because we are processing the paperwork you're sending in, and we're answering your questions you have. So it's a really good tool for all of us to use. It's a quick reference tool that outlines the program differences. I shared in my email this morning an Excel spreadsheet, because I know some people like to look at it that way and maybe arrange it however you want to arrange it. But like I mentioned earlier in the webinar, we've also put it live as a Google Sheet that anybody with the link, which I made it a clickable link here, but I don't know what format you're looking at the slideshow in. So I also spelled out that very long and ridiculous web address. And we'll go to that maybe. So I want to go to that one now. And it looks like some of you are already out there. Kimberly, can you just give me a shout? Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is the Google Sheet that I was talking about. Skylar was able to get it up on the website. I think that's what Skylar sent me an email earlier today. So it's also can be found on our forms page on our website, but I did share the link with everybody as well. And so you will see column A is going to have the different places where a policy might be different for each program. So we have, you know, does the program provide security deposit assistance? So let's look. You know, line 2, row 2 is going to have, how are we funded? How is the program funded? Of course, that usually informs whether or not we can do certain things. If it's federal dollars, we have a lot more guidelines versus state dollars. But just for your information, we wanted to provide the funding source. But then if you just look in HCV, security deposit assistance, we don't have it in HCV. But if you do scroll over, you can see, well, but in BASH, we have the SSVF potential funds that could assist with security deposit. And actually with the emergency housing voucher program, which is a federally funded program, we can provide security deposit assistance. So this really helps those of you who administer several of our programs, or for those of you who are curious, maybe, oh, I really think we might want to branch out and you know, look into those CAT vouchers. I think that's something our agency could support. Let me just take a look at what, you know, what differences there are with the CAT program. Is this something we could potentially administer? So, you know, shared this with you in a couple different formats. The PDF format does not work unless you have really strong reading glasses. Anyway, it doesn't work for me. But if you all look through this and find that there is something very important that we're missing, that you have questions on, please let us know, let your SPOC know, let me know, and we can work on adding it. For example, we have added a section called vital documents. You just heard Courtney say they don't require the birth certificate anymore in CAT. well, I still require a birth certificate and HCV. So we're going to fill that out. That's coming soon, but that's our most recent topic. It's growing. I mean, we're up to 35. I know it says 37 there, but like 35, 34 different areas where our programs differ. And we're happy to kind of clear up some more questions that you might have. But again, please let your SPOC know if there's something more you want to see here, or something doesn't make sense. Let us know, and we're happy to talk through it with you. Okay. Oops. Okay. This is how we're doing it. Okay. So that's it for our program comparisons and our rental assistance roundtable. I do see we have a question. So Renee has a question about the EHB referrals. Renee, this looks different in each community. I believe that you at Garfield are getting the referrals directly from your coordinated entry system. In other communities, particularly in the balance of state where you guys have that relationship direct with your coordinated entry region, you're getting those referrals directly. If that is not the case, let me know offline, but I do believe that's currently how things are working in the counties that you guys have emergency housing vouchers for, because I'm not getting them. Let me just put it that way. I haven't gotten one in a while. Okay, so we want to take an opportunity to talk to you all about some website updates that we have made. I want to say thank you in this public arena to my staff, Skylar, who has been working very diligently on learning how to update our website and is very, very quick on making the updates when we request them. So thank you, Skylar. And he's taken it upon himself to sort of clean things up when he sees it. He's added a whole new page that we want to share with you all that I think you'll find very helpful. Again, I don't know if you can click the links in the handouts that I provide you, so I also spell out the links. But what I want to show you is this really cool page called Tools for Contractors. So if you go to the Office of Rental Assistance, you can kind of scroll down where we have some different websites, but we have added this page called Tools for Contractors, that's you all, where we are going to be posting the action alerts. When we send out an action alert or a tip of the day, they'll show up here. So for example, those 3 CAT program action alerts that went out a couple weeks ago, we were able to get those put on the website. So if you can't find the millions of emails that I send, you can just come here and see, or if you're like, I swear there was an action alert about COLA when the cost of living increase happens for Social Security, that will be here. And our hope is that we can kind of go back a couple of years and get some put out there. We are going to have a section on how-tos, quick 1 or 2 pagers with screenshots, how to fill out a HAP contract, how to fill out a W-9, just those kind of day-to-day things that we might present in a larger training on new admissions, but you really just want to know how to fill out the W-9. We don't want to, go sit through a 2-hour webinar to get that information. So that is a section we're working on. We have a lot of process manuals, process sheets. How do I complete an annual re-exam? How do I do change of ownership? How do I put a hold on a payment in Elite? How do I report identity theft if a participant says this isn't my income on that EIB report? We have been able to centralize all of those process sheets that we've created. That's on this Tools for Contractors page. And then another very exciting section that's being built up is our template letters. We have a lot of different templates on how to let someone know that they didn't pass the criminal background check that we ran, or they are at 0 HAP and we want to give them a heads up that in 6 months they're going to, be successfully exited from the program. We're going to be building this out as the weeks and months go by, but we wanted to be able to share with you all a template so that we are consistent in how we communicate certain aspects of our program to our participants. So that is out here. While I'm here, I can show you just a couple other cool things. So we have all of our forms, and they are separated out by program. And then of course there are just some forms that can be used for any program. This is a drop down. Here you'll find that program comparison chart that we were talking about. That Google Sheet is linked here. And again, this is something that as we are clicking on the links, particularly Skylar, and he finds that, oh, this is an old form, or this goes to a completely different form than what the title says. He's doing just going out there and updating that. But if you all click on something and it's not what you think it should be, let your SPOC know, and we will get it updated and corrected. Again, work in progress, but I think it's coming along. And then if you are one of those lucky agencies that administers many of our programs, this is very helpful because the forms are separated out by different programs. And then we have all of our schedules out here, our payment standards, our utility allowances, and our income limits. Always the most current, and anything historical from 2021 and earlier, we do have saved on our drive. So if you need it for any reason and you can't access it, let your SPOC know and we can get it to you. But what we put out here is what's current today, because we don't want to confuse anybody. And finally, we have our training page where we will put all of the recordings when we can record. There are some webinars that we're not able to record, but when we can record them, we put them out here. So we're up to date through July 20th. And in addition, if there were webinar handouts, there's also a link so you can access all the handouts that were provided in that webinar. So this is handy if you missed a webinar, or if you have someone in your office who wasn't able to attend, or if you're new or have a new staff person and you really want them to learn more about W-9s, EFTs, and payments, you can send them to this webinar page. We go back to 2019. You'll find that we repeat some of our webinars because it's important information, and there's a lot of staff turnover. So we'll slowly start deleting the older ones if we've since done a newer presentation of the same topic, just to kind of get the old information out of there. We haven't done that in a little bit. I like to go through and make sure there wasn't something additional that we covered before we delete it. We also have our W-9s and EFT trainings. Those are very important. Again, we got to get our landlords paid. We want to make sure we do that process correctly. And then all of Mickey's wonderful HQS inspection training and test information can also be found on our training page. And just some information to help you with the rent reasonable process. So all that to say, we have a very robust and always improving website that we want you all to use and be comfortable with. And I think there's been a request in the past where we just do a whole webinar on navigating the website, and we're happy to look into that. But for now, if you guys want to get out there and take a peek and then just give us some feedback, we're happy to consider whatever you guys have to offer. Okay, and then one more update in regard to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. A couple months back, we were able to increase Housing Choice Voucher baselines by quite a bit because of some reserve dollars we need to spend by the end of the year. And we're spending, and I've got, I'm working with HUD right now on some numbers in our budget to see if we can continue to lease up those vouchers that we put in your baseline. We did say that any unused vouchers from the most recent baseline increase will be recaptured on August 31st. That's in a week. I'm still waiting on some information back from HUD regarding our budget. And so I'm going to push that deadline to September 15th. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you have unused vouchers from the most recent baseline increase, and you can get that information from your SPOC if you're not sure what the most recent baseline increase numbers are, I would encourage you to pull those names from your waiting list and get those vouchers issued, because as we come to the fourth quarter of 2022, unbelievable, but here we are, we do need to really put the brakes on leasing if we are at risk for some kind of shortfall scenario in the next calendar year. Again, I'm waiting for HUD to respond with what that might look like. So right now, I will let you know that we will be considering baseline recouping by September 15th. I suspect that could be pushed to September 30th. Again, I want to wait to hear from HUD. We will let you know in writing, because I know not everyone attends the webinar. But while I have your attention, if you have any newly issued vouchers that you have not been able to locate the applicants, that you know the voucher is going to expire and they're not requesting an extension, let's work on getting those expired from Elite. And that's a process that our agencies do who are in Elite. Any voucher that is never leased up, just a voucher that's been pulled from the waiting list, you either have done the briefing and they've disappeared, or you can't even reach them for the briefing and their voucher is set to expire. We need to work on cleaning up those numbers. That plays a big role in my budget conversations with HUD. If they see we have a lot of vouchers still searching on the street, their concern is that they may all lease up, and we don't have the budget to support that. So if we can get a really good clean number, I am going to follow up with our tip of the day. I think we've done in the past on that process of expiring vouchers, when you do it versus when we do it. But I just wanted to put that plug out there because that will help us with our data. And that is all we have in terms of the presentation. If there are any questions you all have, you can use this opportunity in the Q&A to ask them. And then Kimberly, it looks like you have a question.
I do have a question that I didn't answer in the chat, that we didn't answer in the chat. And this question is for whoever, Courtney or Ann, probably. Someone asked, what is the difference between project-based assistance, PBV, and Section 811, which is project rental assistance? And one of you can elaborate on the difference between those two. That'll be great.
Sure. And the reason we didn't focus on the 811 project rental assistance in this presentation is that we don't ask any of the voucher contract agencies to actually help us manage that program. We are doing it all in-house. But I appreciate that you've heard of it and you want to learn more about it. We basically have a grant from HUD to provide project-based rental assistance in specific properties. So just like any other project-based assistance, specifically for people with disabilities, non-elderly people with disabilities. And those properties cannot have more than 25% of their units with any kind of preference for a person with a disability. So we're really trying to create integrated housing with this program. And what are some of the other differences? I think the other big difference with 811 PRA is we do not have an exit strategy for anybody who's been with us for a year. There is no tenant-based option that they can turn to if they want to leave their property. We certainly have facilitated transfers between properties, but there's no way to exit the program and take your assistance with you, unfortunately. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers the basics. Courtney, is there anything that comes to mind for you that you would add?
No, that somebody with an SHV or a CAT voucher can also utilize an S811 unit, but someone who is only been referred through like MDA, the coordinated entry system, they
Right.
cannot use that interchangeably for a CAT voucher. So it just goes one way.
So our referral source for the 811 PRA is the same transitions services program that Medicaid provides that we use to fill our state CAT vouchers. And if we have a unit available and there isn't anyone that meets that criteria that is interested in that unit, we will turn to the one home system coordinated entry to find somebody who is homeless and disabled. And we then, consider them at risk of being institutionalized. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Anne and Courtney. Sydney with DDRC, I'm so sorry. I just now see your hand was raised. If you still have a question, I've opened up your microphone. And if you don't.
No, sorry, I think I accidentally clicked it.
Oh, well, look, we're testing something out and it worked. Okay, well, good. I did not mean to ignore you. I get in the zone, but thank you. Okay, any other questions out there? And you guys know you can always ask your Spock. And we can get you the answers you need. As always, we're looking for ideas for future webinar topics, even like mini webinars. It doesn't have to be the big monthly webinar topics. Anything you want to see on that tools for contractors page that would be helpful. We're open to any suggestions there. Again, any topics on that program comparison chart that you think we've missed, we are open to those recommendations. We just want it to be a user-friendly program with user-friendly tools for everybody. So as my co-presenters mentioned today, we always appreciate you as our partners because we cannot house the 8,000 plus families that we do without you. So thank you. Let us make this program easier for you in any way. We're open to that feedback. But with that, I am going to stop recording and end the webinar. And I hope you guys have a wonderful remaining summer.